Nothing if we are not professional.
It's the perfect first thing to have come up on the broadcast.
Along with my bald spot as I turn on my my ring light and then my camera froze.
It did.
Yay. That's what happens. This camera's driving me crazy. Like something happened and now it does this like the beginning of every call.
They never ever freeze like when you are in like the perfect pose. They always freeze when you're going to look the dorkiest, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
I mean, at least I can still hear you.
Yes, that's true. And you can just imagine my lips moving.
I just see a tiny dog eye over actually behind your shoulder, I should say. Below your shoulder. I don't know. Not over your shoulder because they're too short. But yeah. Hopefully we'll get you back here in a second. Yeah. Otherwise, I'm just like, talking to just the unmovable person, I guess.
Yeah. Well, and I'm trying to, how do I put an avatar up? But
I don't know.
Oh, good. Touch up I'm checking the box. Touch up my appearance as if that's,
That's going to make a difference.
Virtual background. It won't let me because there's no, anyway. But hi, how are you?
I'm good. You're not even on the screen right now. It's just a talking circle.
Well, I took it off because it's just, frozen.
It's still frozen.
Exactly.
Still frozen. I wonder if sharing your screen is possible or not, given.
Now it says your browser has lost connection to your camera. Yeah, it's just my camera's bugging out. This is like
so weird.
The fancy camera I got myself for Christmas. And it worked well until it didn't. And so I need to contact them.
Yeah, it sounds kind of odd, huh? No other camera
drivers
to switch over to?
It won't let me, or it'll it freaks out.
That's weird.
Or stays freaked out. Yeah, like when I try to, if I am trying to be professional and I try to switch to just the FaceTime camera like on the laptop. But then you're also looking at my nose, so that's less than ideal.
There is that. So I guess I'll just talk to the pulsating
the white circle.
Yeah. So funny.
Well, one of the things into the light, Michelle.
I'll try not to. I have these two big key lights over me too. It's funny. As soon as I'm off the air, it's like the first thing I do is shut those lights off. And I've been working without them all day, but it'll suddenly feel like I've been plunged into darkness because I don't have these big spotlights on me. Ooh, I see you.
Yeah, we'll see how long it lasts.
We shall see.
I just have to look perfect all the time so that when it freezes,
yes, it's just always like, yes, exactly. Oh my goodness. You posted something the other day and tagged me and OMGIMG in it that was a little flyer or something that came with stickers. Was that what it was?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And you talked about how one of the things that we talk about is how to delight people. And I referenced a few weeks ago, it might have been last week, I don't know, time is irrelevant at this point, but I referenced a TED Talk by a guy named Rennie Gleason, who talks about how your 404 page can actually delight people, and we had mentioned that. So to delight people with an Easter egg 404 page doesn't have to be elaborate. It just has to be a little bit clever. And so you gave me the link of how to build ours in Beaver Builder, and I had never done that before. So I was rather impressed with myself that it really wasn't that difficult, but I didn't struggle with it, is what I'm trying to say. It was like I figured it out. Basically, I just had to do it, and then, whatever.
Well, anyway, you got a button to do an animation. I've never done that in Beaver Builder before.
Right? That was kind of cool. Anyway, I wanted to share it. So this is our 404 page not found, and just the little tongue-in-cheek humor was like, there's nothing to see here, which is ironic for a website about images. But hey, we'd rather focus on helping you be found and looking good. So try the navigation above or hit the back to homepage below. Wherever you land, we're here to help. So is it like the most clever? No. But does it really speak to who we are as our brand? Kinda. I thought so.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
And so I just wanted to share that.
That's in the nature of in the way that you and I usually collaborate. Like you went in and put in this great copy and your first Beaver Builder experience. This is their default page with the huge header. And so I will probably go in and make because the, the 404 is less important, but they make it gargantuan. And so I'll probably,
it is rather enormous, but no
I will
images.
change it to, something there, right? And then I'll change it to 404. There's nothing to see here, which is ironic, and like make it, zhuzh it.
Yeah, exactly. Which is kind of fun. Anyway, so I just wanted to share that. I thought that was cool. And
like
I have used Beaver Builder in the past, but not the theming. I think that's what it was called, right? Theming.
Right. Themer.
Yeah. Themer. Okay. Yeah. I mean, I knew it was something like that, but so that was my first time using that.
Another one. Oh, it kind of went away, but.
Oh, what is it? Oh, my cat's tail just came in my face. Yeah. Okay.
It's not really there anymore. But I was just trying to show another one of like, I've really enjoyed. There we go. Settings, present. I'm going to present. Share screen. If it lets me, WordCamp US. Yeah, share. So
you found the top secret WordCamp US 2023 launch page of OMGIMG. Gotta say it like you're a superhero movie or something.
Exactly. So yeah, ignore the top part because obviously that's what's showing now. The rest of it I hid after WordCamp US. But I love, like, we've been making more and more of these kinds of pages, and I love having fun with the text. Years ago, there was a launch of a Chrome extension, Gmail extension that basically made your inbox a to-do list. I should find a link because I want to give the guy credit. The guy who started it sent out these newsletters, and they look, it's long been said that the most effective newsletters look like plain text. Like obviously there's time and place, niche emails or whatever, or if you're trying to do lots of articles or something, like then a traditional HTML email makes more sense. But most emails, transactional emails, convert better if they just look like plain text because we're prone to just skim them and get on with it. But he was the first one that I saw who his emails looked like plain text, but he would go through and he would bold and italics. And so it read like a comic strip or something, like it because it had emphasis, and you wound up, you couldn't help but read it like you were just reading, where you're like, oh, this part's, big and bold, and this part's, grayed out. And so creativity with typography, but in a very limited way, intentionally. Like rich text would be the way you describe it in web terms. And so trying to do more pages that look like that, just,
I like that.
And lots of short paragraphs and variation in font size. Like I try not to go crazy with it, but I try to do that, whenever there's like, even on our homepage, we have paragraphs that have happy text. And so
there we go. Sorry, you weren't on the screen for the longest time. I apologize.
Zoom, whoosh. Yeah. I just assumed I hit a button.
No, it was me. It was the cat, actually. Believe it or not,
my video is actually working, you don't want me on the screen anymore. I understand.
No, the cat. I don't know if you saw me pull the cat off of the table a second ago. She actually was stepping on the laptop, and I didn't realize that she had pressed a button that changed things on the screen. So she's funny. She's a menace. Yeah, no, I love that. I love working with words. I think words are amazing. Images are amazing. When you can use the two together to tell a story is when it's perfect. I have a little bit of a story. So I actually tweeted about this about an hour ago. I write the newsletter for Underrepresented in Tech.com, and we use newsletter glue. So it's like building a web page. a post. And then when you hit publish, it can actually go out through your mail aggregator. So in our case, MailChimp, and then it goes into everybody's mailboxes. Well, first I noticed that I have failed to update the slug on it, and it's still saying December. So I will fix that next month because I can't fix it now that it's gone out, right? However, I will say that last month I sent it out, and I had just been following the format that we'd had in there for a long time, and it's like, we have a section that's like, read these if you want to diversify your news feed. Here are some articles to read, the title of the article, and then it's like, click here, and then the title is something, register here, and then the title is something, read more or whatever. And I didn't realize when I was putting it together that I was doing it quickly last month. I failed to do some alt text on one or two of the images, and links like that for accessibility are not helpful, right? And as a result, I got an email from a blind woman who said, I can't believe that here you are talking about underrepresentation and you are not creating an accessible newsletter. And I swallowed. I was like, oh my gosh, I can't believe it either, right? And so I replied back to her. And I think people are used to calling other people out on accessibility and getting pushback because basically she was very helpful, but it was also like, do with this what you will, kind of like there was this kind of like, I'm going to tell you, but I don't expect you to actually do anything, overtones to it, right? And I responded right away and I said, oh my gosh, this is never our intention. I will do better. And I expect that you will see a difference in the next newsletter. But if you continue to find issues, although it is not your job to educate me, I would love to hear about them so that I can fix things going forward. Yeah. So I sent out the April newsletter today, and I fine-tooth combed that thing. Like I made sure, like instead of saying read, like the title of the article was the link to the outside diversify things, right? And like every single image had alt text that made sense. If I closed my eyes, I could hear what it was all about, kind of thing. And so I replied to her again. I said, the newsletter went out again today. If you have an opportunity to read it, I would value your feedback. And she replied and said, so much better. Thank you. And I was like, yes, I did it. I paid attention. Right. So no matter how good we are, because I talk about accessibility all the time here with us and in other places. And I am by no means an accessibility expert. I am just somebody who wants to do better and learning how to do better and then sharing those how to do betters with other people. And so to be able to say it publicly today on Twitter, last month I really screwed up, but this month I got the thumbs up on it. And I think sharing those kinds of things and showing, our feet of clay or whatever says, I'm not perfect, but I want to do better. And I want to remind you all to do better too, so that you don't fall into the same traps that I have. And so, so I thought I would just mention that because we do talk about accessibility a lot and newsletters. You just talked about newsletters. So I just kind of wanted to bring that story to the forefront and just share that no matter if it's about images or not about images, accessibility is important.
Yep. And baby steps moving forward and iteration. Like, I think part of why I fell in love with the internet in 96 or whatever was because once I started realizing that things could change. Like it's not a painting. It's not not that you can't change a painting, but you know what I mean?
Right.
Like
it's not static.
Exactly. And that's honestly, I try to explain that to people. Like people are looking post jobs, post gigs and say, pixel perfect. And I'm like, I can't apply to that. Like, I don't work that way. Like we can wiggle towards pixel perfect. These days, arguably there's no such thing, but that's a philosophical way of looking at it. Just because of, like you said, accessibility and the number of browsers out there and the number of devices and screen sizes and all that stuff. But I personally relish that. Like within these, I work well in sets of rules or find creativity within sets of rules. And my camera freezes again.
Yeah.
I look so serious.
So serious. There was, I'm trying to remember. I can't find. I was looking for the article real quick. Google has changed its logo a few times over the years, right, from different fonts, whatever. But there was a point in time where they literally changed one letter by just a couple of pixels, because when it got redesigned, it was just a little bit off, and to most people would never have even noticed the difference. But there was quite like a hubbub in the community, the tech community, whatever you want to call it, at the time, that Google had changed this tiny little bit about their logo. And people were irritated because why did it have to be perfect? It doesn't really matter, kind of thing. But yeah, it was really weird. I'm trying to find the article about it.
Yeah, that sounds really familiar. I also, and then they changed it again to be simpler. Like it went from serif to sans serif, to be, and it was some amazing stat that like by being able to lower the file size and convert to an SVG or whatever, because they're Google, they actually saved, terabytes and terabytes of download just of their logo, which is
crazy,
amazing to think of. Yeah.
All right, I found it. So I'm gonna, since you're not even on the screen right now, I'm gonna share mine.
Yeah.
So let's see. So
remove me altogether. I've unplugged my camera. I'm trying to find the other one.
All right. Hopefully you can see my screen. I don't know if you can. Can you see my screen? I hope. Okay. So this was in 2014. Excuse me. And this was on Huffington Post. While you were kicking back with a burger and a day off of work, Google was making some serious italics changes to its logo. See the difference? If you're a typography or design nerd, you probably can. The rest of us, however, need an explanation. The change made was a tiny shift in kerning, or the space between two letters, of the G and the L, moving the G 1 pixel to the right and the L 1 pixel down and to the right. The subtle difference supposedly makes the overall logo more pleasant on the eyes and easier to read. And people on Reddit spotted it. Like if there's a little animation that shows you the before and after, and it's like, oh yeah, I see it now. But would I have noticed it like just in passing? I wouldn't have. I don't even think I noticed when they changed the font, quite honestly, because it's like, as this is almost naked guy on the right hand side of the screen here, but John Cena actually, but yeah, completely derailed me, flustered me, but but yeah, it's amazing how much we can notice about even just the little things like that, right? Like it's insane to me. And so, but it goes to show you that people do notice these things. And get back to our primary reason for being here: images matter, and how you choose to tell a story with images matter. There you are. I see you again.
All right.
Drag drop
down.
I was
trying to find my old webcam because I'm kind of fed up with this one, but it's in a box somewhere. You'll
find it by next week.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. I was using it.
But yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting to see, and the people who notice and the people who don't notice. I mean, the web is famous for its fanatics and its pedantics. Can you describe a person as a pedantic? But it matters, right? Like it matters strongly to some people and not at all to other people, but that's okay.
Yeah, exactly.
But further proof of the like iterability of the internet, right? Like, and it's how I build products, which some people are okay with, and some people expect perfection out of the box. But, it's, to me, I'd rather get something out there and in front of people and have them using it. And then that way I can, and sometimes make breaking changes, which I try to limit once it's in front of, some number of people. But
yeah.
I like that nature of the internet. I like that we can try things. There's arguably it's become quite homogenized, which is no fun, but we can at least get creative in our own sandboxes. So
yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I just love the fact that we can use imagery to help tell stories, and that even for somebody who's blind or has low vision, the description of those images plays into that storytelling as well, right? So I think I've mentioned before, I'm one of the moderators on the WordPress photo directory. And last Thursday, I think it was Thursday, I was the table lead for the Yoast Contributor Day. So don't feel bad for me, but I did get up at 3 a.m. because it kicked off at 3:30 a.m. my time. And I wanted to be there and be, able to help people. But we moderated over, I think, close to 250 photos in one day just through that event. And as I look at the photos that get moderated in, that get submitted, it always breaks my heart a little to have to decline a photo. But some photos just aren't good photos. Some are blurry. If your horizon is really janky, I'm going to decline that photo because the ocean doesn't go high, right, low, left. It's pretty even, those kinds of things. And I want it to be the best that it can be. And there are photos that are technically fine and we do approve them in. But as I look at them, I think to myself, why would anybody ever want to use that photo on their website or in a project when it's like a birthday cake that says, "Happy birthday, Michelle," right? Or whatever, kind of thing. And you never know, maybe somebody will be like, "Oh my gosh, that's the perfect card because I have somebody named Michelle and she has a birthday coming up." But I think that those uses are probably further and fewer than other things. However, you just never know. It's all about using the right images for the right story to tell. And every week for Post Status, I put out the, my column, which is kind of like the community roundup, and I choose an image from, and for me, it has to be landscape because of the way I fit it into the newsletter. But I choose one image from the photo directory, and I put that in the newsletter every week, or the column, not the newsletter, the column. And I pull over the description from that and I put that in there, and I try to pick a photo that speaks to me, right? Not just something that's pretty, but something that makes me feel something, is evocative of some kind of an emotion. Whether I look at it and I'm like, that is a thing of beauty, or that is so interesting, or the colors are so rich, or it depicts a culture that I'm not part of, and I just kind of, it gives me a glimpse into, a window into that kind of a cultural event. Whether it's Ramadan or Eid or one of those kinds of things that I'm not as well versed in, and I can see those little things. And so I think even if it doesn't tell the story of your website, it can still be something that tells a story in general. And I think that imagery has such incredible power to do that. And that's why, when you said, "Hey, do you want to work with us on OMGIMG?" I was like, heck yeah, because first of all, I'm a photographer and I love images anyway. But the idea of helping other people use images to tell the stories that they are putting out on the web is just such a great opportunity and such a great thing. So I don't know where I'm going with that, but yeah.
Which made me click through to the newsletter that just came out today, and today's images is growing in scale fans.
Yes, I chose that. I randomly picked up. I try not to go through the last 3 or 4 pages. I randomly just put a page number in there, and that picture came up, and it just was evocative to me. I thought that is such a cool photo. I love that it shows the progression. It isn't it's not in a store, right? It's not like I walked into Walmart and put 3 fans next to each other. It's like in somebody's home, and it shows like human needs and necessities too. And it just was really cool. No pun intended. It was a cool picture. Get it? It's fans. Sorry. I'll take my dad jokes someplace else.
Never. They belong here.
Okay.
I used to do a lot more design and like fine art, albeit graphic. Like way back in the day, I was a painter, a person who drew that kind of stuff. And then loved getting on the internet, and then would spend hours and hours and hours and hours in Photoshop, just messing around with filters. Just I loved the randomness of it. And then I went through a phase of what's the old the t-shirt company that people would do contests. They would submit their designs, and then then you try to get people to vote, like upvote your design. And if you'd upvote it, then they'd make the shirt.
Okay.
Well-known 20 years ago. I can't think of it. Yeah. But it, like, in that era of, it was like, and to me, it was, and for better or worse, you can still see this in a lot of my design. Like there was a high point of graphic design, digital design in like early 2000s, the mid-aughts or whatever we were calling them. Just interesting, amazing, beautiful things. And I tried and failed to adopt that style in many things. And because I failed, I still, a lot of what I design still ends up looking like that, unfortunately. But a lot of what I would do is I would start with, like, if I took a photo, I would vectorize it, which wasn't really a thing then, like it is now. Like, we have SVG, we didn't back then. And but make sort of what I thought were compelling designs and then put them on t-shirts or whatever. But at one point I was looking for, it's sort of what you were describing, like, or another way of doing what you were describing, like putting in random numbers. I would put in random words into like Google image search and just kind of see what comes up. And at one point I typed in, I don't know. Oh, well, one of the really interesting things to do 20 years ago was to translate it into like Spanish or something. So like I wanted, I needed images of machines for whatever I was working on. And so I put in Máquina, and I wound up I was greeted with an image that somebody had drawn. And Google had indexed their personal website, found a drawing that they'd done and had for sale. And I was just like, it smacked me in the face. And I contacted the artist and I bought it. And then years later, I got to meet the artist when I moved back to Brooklyn, and that's where she lived. And it was like, oh, this was so cool, but that randomness brought that to me. And I kind of missed that random, randomness of the universe handing you weird things,
Yeah, for sure. Google image search. I learned, I have not checked the veracity of this, so I can't verify for sure. But I learned recently that Jennifer Lopez's, was it 2014 Oscar dress, what was like cut all the way down to her navel and wide open at the top and all of that, was the impetus for Google image search, because people were trying to find that dress online and were hitting Google so hard to find that they actually created Google image search to be able to find images, not just stories that referenced images. So like I said, I don't know. It seems like that would be plausible, but I haven't verified the truth behind that story. But I liked it, and I learned it yesterday, and you said image search, and it made me think of it. So I thought I'd share that.
Nice.
A little random thought. Yeah, exactly. And that's just really like, cool. I mean, that's what plugin development is, though, right? Is you see a need and you find a way to fill it. And that's exactly what Google did with image search.
Yeah.
Which is super interesting.
Except at any point, they've got 500 developers sitting around twiddling their thumbs. And so they can just point.
It's a little different.
Build a thing.
That's right. So just a little different than, a 1 or 2 person show.
So changing topics slightly.
Yes.
One of the developments this week is here's an argument for checking Twitter obsessively. Is a nice person. I'm gonna give him a name check because so far so good. What could possibly go wrong? Faizan, Faizan, who's on Twitter as Faizan King, Faizan King, does design for startups, and I'm sure it's as a marketing growth exercise. Posted that he or his firm will do design for startups for free, not ongoing, not everybody, but had done, kind of the first person to contact me will get a design. And so I, for once, was not the 76th person. Yeah. He said, like, I will design a logo, a banner, or a landing page for you. And I'm like, our homepage needs help. I've been, as we've talked about, like, we're happy with some of the copy, but the design could still use some. So it was like, great, me. And, it's one of those things, like, a lot of the time, I think most of us experience this, you're the 76th person to pile on. Yeah. And usually on Twitter, there's actually, I think usually if it's more than 20, I just won't bother, because it feels silly.
Excessive.
Yeah. But I was the first and contacted him and filled out a questionnaire today, which was an interesting, or yesterday, which was an interesting exercise, specifically because he asked some great questions in the intake form. Who are your customers? The personas, what is your niche? What is your, unique value prop? Like, these things that, we're supposed to have the answers to. And so I think, like, Corey and I did some thinking around that. And I think I was talking to somebody else, but, one of the things that I realized that in the last couple of days, well, and you saw this, or you experienced this too, like, AFK for a day or two away from keyboard, and you come back and your inbox is full and your messages are full and all the things that you didn't finish on Friday are still there. And so it's way too easy to grab the first thing and start working, which is not the way to prioritize and get through everything and yada, yada.
True.
And so spending half a day. So I went away for the weekend, spending half a day trying to recover, essentially, and like build a to-do list. And now, okay, I see what I should work on first and all that. I think Corey and I were definitely guilty at points during our year of conversations of somebody says something and then we just run with the exercise rather than adding that to the list of exercises and then saying, oh, well, let's do this one because it's the most timely and valuable. And so at some point I filled out a questionnaire on HubSpot and completed a couple of personas and then printed them out and then promptly lost the PDFs because that's what you do.
Of course.
But I feel like at some point you and I would benefit from doing this exercise, not today, not just doing it because I brought it up. I'm going to exercise self-control in this instance, but at some point, like, spend this hour going, okay, who do we think our customers are, right?
Yeah. Create those avatars.
Going through the exercise. Yeah.
We have one comment. Can I share that? It's
of course.
Pushing it back. Adam Weeks is watching. He says, yep, Wikipedia says that it was the Jennifer Lopez dress that started Google image search. I know. Who knew? I saw it on TikTok. And they shouldn't ban TikTok. I learned things on there. Anyway, another story.
I'm going to make you a t-shirt that says I learned it on TikTok.
Yeah, exactly.
That's not the first time you've said that. I don't know if you realize that or not.
And no, I say it all the time.
Not criticizing in any way. Like, we are all learning from all of our media.
Yeah.
But
it's interesting that people think that TikTok, I mean, people who don't use TikTok think it's this, like, people dancing and saying stupid things. And yeah, there are some funny videos that make me laugh, right? Like little kids doing things and animals doing really weird things. But I have learned so much because first of all, you teach the algorithm what you like, right? And I have learned so much because to me, it's just these 1 to 10-minute little videos about things. And so whether it ever is useful or not, I brought it up in conversation today, so kind of thing. But whether it's ever, fully useful or not, but I've learned a lot of really cool things. I learned something about Cadence the other day. I didn't know it could do, and I work there because of the Cadence TikTok. And I shared it with somebody else and said, look what it can do. And so I now have another tool in my tool belt working with Cadence. And so, so I do say it a lot because I learn a lot from it.
It's awesome.
It's
That's so
crazy, but it's
cool.
fun. Yeah.
I
It
never
is for
could
sure.
I couldn't figure out how to train the algorithm. And so I was seeing all people dancing and I was like, this is boring. And I've uninstalled it at least half a dozen times and then reinstalled it. Because it's like, for me, I was on Twitter for 10 years before I figured out how to use it.
Mm-hmm.
And the funny thing is I read all the articles and I was even on panels talking about like, you know, ways to optimize outreach and stuff like that, but I could never figure out how to work it into my day,
Yeah.
essentially,
Yeah.
and or where and how to get value for myself. And it seems like I thankfully jumped on a couple of years ago. I don't know whether it was COVID related or not. That would make sense if more people went on social media because of COVID. But anyway,
Mm-hmm.
finding WordPress or Built in Public or Indie Hacker, like these hashtags, these little sort of micro communities, which are very sort of fuzzy at the edges, but groups of people to follow and check out and who consistently add good content or are worth engaging with and stuff like that. And then also training myself to engage with them.
Mm-hmm.
TikTok, I mean, it's very different from other social media. And
Mm-hmm.
so I've tried to post as a musician, but it's creating video is way harder. I mean, what we just talked about, like we both are very comfortable with words. Clearly, we are both very engaged in word-based communities and we type and type
Mm-hmm.
and type, or I've even started dictating into this fancy microphone because it's faster than typing a lot of the time.
Mm-hmm.
But creating video, the content that I'm trying to create is not hit record on a phone and start talking.
Right.
I'm trying to show, and I'm not trying to do anything fancy, but that's not what I'm trying to show. And so I have a real hard time creating. Okay, fine. But I also haven't figured out how to train, like swiping the right speed so that the algorithm understands that I want or don't want,
Mm-hmm.
or finding the people to follow or what have you,
I can
um,
teach you that another day.
that would be great, honestly.
I could. It's a lot easier than you're thinking it is, but
Probably.
yeah.
But
I'll share
it's
with you
also
another
my
time.
understanding that it's different kind of content, right? And so
Right.
like Cadence is creating videos, and so presumably people are engaging and consuming that. But I think it's my understanding that that's the exception. There are not a lot of WordPressers
Right.
or product people on there. And I'm like, great, Wild West, like let's be one of the first. Why not? But then how do you get them to find
Yeah.
you? And then like anything, it's how much time can you spend on any one channel
Mm-hmm.
and know that there's engagement and
Right.
that kind of thing. So
But the important thing to remember is that every social channel doesn't mean you have to create. You
true.
can consume, right? So for
Yep.
TikTok, yeah, I'm not going to give you my TikTok. I'm not going to publicly give you
Do
my
not do that.
TikTok channel
Good.
because I have got a bunch of just stupid stuff on my account. Stupid little games that you can play on there. Like, look how good I got it on the first try, or
Love it.
little stories I've told, and a lot of singing. I will tell you, there's no rhyme or reason to the content I've put out there,
You
but
sing
I can
without rhyme or reason?
sometimes. It's really weird.
But there was a dad joke
Yeah,
for you.
that was a dead for sure. But I consume more than anything.
Mhm.
And one of the things that I think is incredible about just consuming information through TikTok is that you are learning about what people who are similar to you are looking for. Right?
Mm.
So, like, Adarim has a channel, I see their stuff. Gravity Forms has a channel, I see their stuff. I'm trying to remember some of the other ones. WordPress.com has a channel. Cadence has a channel. So there are other WordPress companies and agencies that do have TikTok channels. Are they as popular as Bella Porch, who just like bops her head around to music and has 5 million or 20 million? I don't even know how many millions followers. No, of course not, because it's a different genre and it's a different audience. 100%. But do I see what people who are like me are creating and are seeking? Yes, I do. And does that help me be able to create content, whether it's on TikTok or someplace else? Yes, it does. And so all of that to say that the only reason I spend and waste so much time on TikTok is market research.
Sure.
That's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
But I hear you. I do hear you. Like it's fascinating. Yeah, it's fascinating to see what if you can do the exercise to go, why am I sucked into that? Or, why do I find that compelling? Or, could I do that better? Or if my community, my comfort zone is Twitter, how could I translate some of this stuff that I'm finding so engaging over there, or what have you?
What's really interesting is when we are creating websites for others. So when we're working as an agency work, or we are freelancing as an agency of one, however you want to call it, we constantly tell our customers that they are not their target audience, right? So like I had, as an example, I was building a website for a chiropractor, and his bread and butter, like his schedule was filled with geriatric patients, like slip and falls, twisted hips, knee replacements, that kind of stuff. And he was a wealthy man because of the geriatric clientele. And I'm talking like 40 and up, really, but mostly even 60 and up, right? But he really, really wanted athletes. He really wanted his practice to be about athletes. And I said to him one day, I said, do you know how much time and energy and money you're going to have to put into changing and how many people you're going to drive away by doing that, right? But also, then there's other people who would say, I like this, and I like this, and I like this. And I say to them, you are not your target audience. You understand HVAC, built a website for an HVAC guy. You understand what HVAC is, and you are trying to sell to people who understand what HVAC is. I want you to sell it to somebody who says, my furnace just broken. I don't know who to call about that, right? And so they're not their own, they're not their own target audience. That is not the same for people selling plugins, because we are our target audience. Maybe we know more about our product than other people do, but we're all in the WordPress ecosystem. Now, that's not to say that a niche, plugin like GiveWP, who is really working with people who are fundraising, who are building their own websites, who are bootstrapping, and who have agencies building it, right? They are not necessarily their target audience. However, they understand it because they are people who use WordPress, and they understand how a plugin has to work within WordPress. And so we have it's a little bit different for us with OMGIMG, because we are selling to people who do understand and are a little bit like us, because we build websites, we write blog posts, all of those things apply to us as well. So it's a little bit different, right? Although we do have also those end users who are building their first blog and that kind of stuff. So it's a little bit of like I always say, our audiences are divided. We really do have a dichotomy of people who really get it and people who are just starting and have no idea how to progress.
Right.
And so you have to find that right balance and strike that right balance, and how you market to those people and how you advertise to those people.
Yeah. Yeah. And a lot of it ends up being education, which I enjoy the activity of, the opportunity of, but you also, we're still at the beginning of the bell curve. And so it's tough to know what resonates, or it's tough to know what questions people are asking. We've talked about this a lot over the last year and a half of doing these calls of, how are people going to find our solution, full stop. And that's tough.
We're not going to put out an ad in Inc. or Forbes or something like that. It's very different how we, especially when you're bootstrapping, right? Especially when you are not the big, huge companies that we have in WordPress.
Right.
And so it makes a difference. And we have to be really targeted and really careful about how we spend our time and resources, for sure. Absolutely. One of those things, though, and we talked about, is having you apply to speak at different events, and you put in an application today somewhere. So,
Yep.
that kind of stuff begins. And I will mention that the call for speakers for WordCamp US is closing next week. So if you have designs of doing something for WordCamp US, we should look
I
at.
thought it was the 15th?
Isn't it the 20? No. Oh, did they extend it? I think it's the 29th. Let me look it
April
up.
3rd. No, that's when that went out.
Apply to speak.
I have their email because
Yeah, I'm looking at their website here. April 29th, the call for speakers closes. So
they did extend it because their original email was 22nd.
Okay, yep. So it's the 29th.
So I would have missed it.
Yes, me also, because I am hoping to put in a talk, which is why I didn't organize this year, so I actually be able to be considered for a talk. But yeah, so we should talk about that. Maybe throw some ideas together in Slack over the next day or two about things that you could think about presenting on a stage that big with that kind of an audience.
Yep. Yeah. Corey and I talked about a couple of weeks ago, like we started brain dumping. And so I got out the smaller one, basically a revised version of the image talk that I did for WordCamp Rochester. Got that out, but I don't think that's WordCamp US.
I don't either. That's why I want to think about it some more too.
Yeah. But I do think the build in public one with Corey would be really interesting. And so I started trying to consolidate our brain dump enough to write 4 sentences, as a pitch essentially.
And let me proof it. Let me read it.
Absolutely. Yeah, of course. You can't not, or I would. It would not be submitted without you.
I like giving my opinion.
Like, well, and we welcome it. And I have it in the back of my mind to include you in it too, because it's like if the 3 of us were on stage, I think that would be really interesting because it's, the history that we've gone through, I think would be really interesting. And then I think because there's part of what it can't just be our story. Like, yes, there's stuff to learn from our story or whatever, but I'm drawing from, even when he and I were brain dumping, I wound up drawing from or realizing how long I've been in the startup world and how much transparency there was with a lot of in the startup world that there wasn't before that. Right. And pre WordPress, really, for me, there were a lot of people trying to do things differently in starting essentially small businesses online. And the transparency was interesting. I didn't always agree with it, or I didn't always see the value in it. Still half and half. But doing stuff like this, right, for me, like, for the putting all your salaries online. Okay. Like, I don't know that I don't get anything out of that, but they do, and other people do. And okay, cool. At some point, somebody will explain it to me and I'll go, oh, now it makes sense, but shaking things up, and there were more transparency and more visibility behind, like, who runs the company. And I remember, Peldy, the guy who started Balsamic, like and the startup story actually was a lot more, how companies were started. You usually would never hear about it, like how Adobe started. I don't know how, other software companies, and a lot of times small companies wanted to appear bigger. And I think that changed at the beginning of, at least for me, like one of the compelling things was getting on, Joel Spolsky had a forum, Joel on Software, and hearing people talk about their stories or share other people's stories. And again, Peldy from Balsamic, telling his story publicly, sharing it with a lot of people, and also on the website saying, like, I am one person, or we are 3 people. Like, we will not reply on weekends because we have wives and children, and stuff like that made it interesting and made it relatable, and stuff like that. And so, in starting the brain dump, it's not just Corey and I a year ago and you and I, 4 months ago, but our own reasons for wanting to come into this and willingness to do this. It was Corey's idea, and I've talked about that. Like, we said we'd work together. He said we're going to do it all in public. I said, okay, but I mean, how nice that we asked you to get involved and you were like, of course we're going to continue to do these calls. I'm going to take over for Corey,
Right.
That's not everybody, right? Like, I wouldn't even say that's most people would be interested or willing to do that, even if you're as gregarious and outgoing as you are, right? Like, so I think it'd be interesting, and I think the more of us on stage, might be more interesting. So that's
count me in. If you want to do it, I'm in. Count me in. I'll be there either way. So
well, exactly. Like, we're all gonna be there. In various degrees, myself the smallest by far. We are a little bit known in the WordPress world, and have our own stories, and some of it is documented, and so I think that would be also interesting. I mean, obviously also self-serving, like, people might be more interested to come because we are who we are, but 3 kind of known entities on stage, I would go see that. Like,
I'd go see us.
I want to say the last talk I ever actually dipped into was Pippin Williamson, which was 100 years ago at this point. But like, I didn't need to hear a talk about SEO or something, a topic that I can Google. Like, that's not how I learn. But hearing a person I could relate to building products like I do and running businesses like I do, I wanted to walk into that room as much to hear what questions people asked,
Sure. Yeah, that makes sense.
And so Corey said too, like, this might be, I haven't looked at the application yet, but it might be something that we pitch as a talk, but also I think I might put in a sentence that says this might also work great as a workshop if we kind of presented for a while and then said, okay, you've got 3 people with varying experiences in varying positions, who hopefully have proven that we can think well on our feet. Pick our brains. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, for sure. I like that. That's really awesome. Yeah, now if you want me in there, count me in. I'll do whatever y'all need, for sure.
Love it.
Interestingly, you pointed out, I'm gonna take us down a little bit aside for a second. That
How
like
dare you?
that I was like, yeah, count me in. Let's do it. I'll do that. Tuesdays, yeah. Let's find a time and we'll just, like, whatever, be part of this project. I think when you are a public person like we are, and I've talked about this before in other forums, I get DM'd a lot, right? And sometimes I've written about how it's just scammers or how it's men trying to hit on women online, etc. But oftentimes, take that part out of it, I get hit up in socials because people want something from me. And today, somebody, I'm like, if you want to connect with me on LinkedIn, I'm probably going to say yes, unless clearly you're a scammer or something like that. So I connected with somebody today. I was like, yeah, sure, whatever. And that person immediately messaged me and thanked me for connecting because they see the work I do and it's valued, blah, blah, blah. And, totally buttered me up. And then hope that they could learn from the things that I share. And would I take them on and be their mentor? And immediately I responded and said, I don't have time to take on new clients because, number one, I don't have time to mentor people for free. And number two, if I did, I'd be coaching for money, which I've done in the past, but I don't have time for that right now either. And I was just like, I have to draw some boundaries someplace, right? And so it may have seemed to you like I was just like immediately yes, but like Corey gave me the heads up, so I had time to think about it before you messaged me. And then also, I am, even if I say yes quickly, I am there very thoughtful about where I spend my time and my energy and my resources, because there's only one of me and there's only so much time in a day.
No kidding.
But yeah, and that's just, I don't know why I decided to share that story right now, because it was very fresh, literally happened half an hour before we started today's broadcast. But yeah, just kind of in general to think about people and their time and their energy. And when we ask for people to do things, be thoughtful about what we're asking about people. And, you and I have talked, offline a little bit about like, if this takes off, what does the reward for Michelle look like for being involved in all of this? Whereas a lot of people just want me to retweet them, endorse them without any even having looked at their product before. Like, hey, can you tweet this about how great our product is? I'm like, who are you and what is your product? Like, no, like I don't want to lose followers because I'm just suddenly like saying everybody's awesome and buy everybody's stuff, but yeah, so I am thoughtful about those kinds of things.
Yeah, well, you
And I
have
do look
to.
for opportunities. Yeah, absolutely.
I
Absolutely.
get,
But
yeah, it kills me that you get endless solicitation,
comes with the
gender,
territory.
romantic, etc., which is, well, yes, and that sucks.
It does. Yeah.
I want to punch most of them in the nose.
I appreciate that.
But it's also talking. So, like you said, putting that part aside, like in the tech space, I get an endless stream of vote for me on Product Hunt. And
I get those emails,
which makes me never want to be on Product Hunt, like, because then I have to be that guy that's just endlessly asking people. And I think the returns are diminishing, but that's
another story for the
conjecture and a different conversation. But it's and the truth is that I a lot of the time I think like you said, if it looks fine, sure, like it's a vote. It's not, and I'm one of the people who voted, which is different than, can you retweet this or can you
write
which
an
I guess is part of right. Which I think is part of the why I expect that it's diminishing returns, because if you're asking random people who have not actually tried your product to click a button, then what's the point? But it's also like, that's broadly speaking, the friction you're talking about or the effort you're talking about or the engagement you're talking about is one of those things that I always try to think about. Like, it's a cardinal rule of the internet, right? Like, here's a form, if you want them to fill it out, you need as few fields as possible. But even today I read about sometimes you want to add friction. You want that, like, there was a study I just read about that you want, I know what so and I'm actually thinking, because this is more relevant because I'm thinking about adding this to our onboarding, is you fill out a few things, enter your license, you might ask a couple of demographic questions that probably are just for the sake of data collection, but there are apps that do the, like, we're configuring the app for you. But the entering a row in a database is instantaneous these days. Like, generally, even on your phone, like, it's quick. Tech has become amazing. But so there's points where you actually want to add a progress bar that goes creep, 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 and you can show other messages. But also so apparently it leaves an impression on the person of, like, oh, they're working hard to get ready for me.
Right. Right. Whether it's true or it's just an animation, but it still gives that effect.
Right. And
interesting.
And I love that. I love thinking about that. Like, sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. Most of the time, like, it's more work than it's worth, unless you're a very mature product, then you can take the time to build in the nice little extras like that. But it's a lot of fun to think about. And I think about that too. And like in marketing, it's like, or today writing the description of the talk that I'm giving. I have a buddy who is another dev, but is also good with words, and he's a top tier dev, so he's extremely logical. So I love running copy by him because it's often ends up being more of a logic puzzle the way he'll deconstruct the sentences. And then obviously he's still human. So it's like, read it out loud. Do these words flow? Does it feel compelling? Whatever, but a lot of the time, like, we started with 8 sentences and we got it down to 4 because it was like, what's valuable, what makes sense, what should go before what, and things like that.
Right.
And because of, and if you think about it, it's because of the effort on the person reading it. They have to be able to absorb it immediately.
Right. No, that makes sense. Yeah. Very interesting stuff, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah. And sometimes successful and sometimes not. And
there's a psychology to marketing, and I don't think people think about the fact that there's such a huge psychology to marketing. 2 books that I've read that I need to reread because it was so long ago, but one is The Tipping Point, Malcolm McDowell, no, Malcolm somebody, and the other one is Drunk Tank Pink, which really talks about the psychology of the things that we use in marketing, and how, like, you would have thought that the drunk tank at jails and things like that would be like pink or like a blue or green, because we think of those as calming colors. It turns out, though, that, like, whether this is true or not, I don't know, that's what the story says, that pink is actually a color that calms people down when they're in that kind of and to me, like, no, but like, apparently I'm wrong, right? So yeah, so there's a whole psychology behind things. Like, my dad used to put the window in his office behind his chair so that like the sun was glowing behind him and like coming through the window, and would be more intimidating. And like, he literally did that on purpose to try to make himself feel more authoritative and have people sit in front of him and feel that he was more authoritative. I went and visited a guy once that I was like invited to come and talk about perhaps building a website. And I went to his office, and he literally had his desk up on a dais that was a good 6 or 7 inches higher. And he was in finance, but he had like 6 or 7 huge monitors, a big throne-like chair. And I was in this, like, not a folding chair exactly, because it was a nice office, but like a waiting room chair, when he's in this like up higher and this big, like, pay no attention to the man behind the curtain kind of like effect, right? And it was everything I could do not to laugh, because it was so obvious what he was trying to do with this. Do you really need a stage, sir, for your desk? Like, that is absolute insanity. But for him, like, it made sense. Like, if he was going to look like an authority in finance when people came to invest thousands upon hundreds of thousands of dollars, he needed to look impressive to them. Right. It didn't impress me. It impressed me in a very negative way, because it just made me, I got in the car and I let out all the laughter that I was holding in during the meeting. But I understand the psychology behind those kinds of things. And there is a psychology to how things are presented in marketing. And so, yeah, so looking, and that goes back to TikTok, it goes back to Twitter, it goes back to how people engage, and how our audience for this product engages, which is going to be different for how an audience for a different product engages. And so those are the things we need to keep in mind. And those are the things we're going to dig into every week and get a little bit deeper into as we continue to look for these things. We're over time. I want to let you ask you if there's any parting thoughts before we kind of break up for today. And just so anybody that's listening, this is not our only opportunity that Corey and I talk to each other every week. We have a constant stream of DMs back and forth about, what do you think of this? What do you think about this design? Can you help me with this? All of these things. But this is the part that we share with you publicly about what we've done in the last week and the things we're looking forward to, and a little bit of rambling here and there, because that's just the nature of human beings as they get together and talk through these things. So do you have anything you'd like to say?
Especially at 5 p.m.
5 o'clock
right.
in the evening is right.
Yeah, 5 to 6. Like, I think it's almost advantageous that our brains are sort of like blah at this time of day, like, because and there was, for a while, I cared about us being focused, and it's like we end up talking shop, and so it's still relevant, but it's if we end up talking about random things. I think the only other thing I wanted to shout out is Ben Layer WP.
Yes.
And you just put a message on the screen.
Yeah, because Marcus just said he's here. Thanks for doing this. He loves seeing the progress week to week. I think is in direct response to our saying sometimes we just ramble. But thank you, Marcus. Yes, Ben Layer WP.
Ben Layer WP invited me to be, I think, the first person on his new video podcast last week, and total sweetheart. A very English self-deprecating, which I don't think is quite warranted. I thought it was a great conversation. But everybody should go check out his podcast, which you can hear me talk about the same stuff, but in a different context, I like to think, or different, whatever's top of mind that day kind of thing. And then also ramble about English tea and a couple of other random things, music that we talked about and whatnot. But
we'll retweet that link out by tomorrow. So if people are listening or they want to go and look for that, we can we'll retweet that. Maybe we'll pin it for a little bit so people can find it easily. He did not have an intro or an outro. When I said to him, "Do you have your bumpers ready?" He said, "Oh," and he used an expletive. "What are bumpers?" And I was like, I can help you. So I created I did the voiceover. I did his intros and outros and the imagery for that to make him look a little more professional when he starts to put things out there. So he was pretty happy. So yeah, I'll make sure that gets put up on our social links so people can take a look at that. That was a great interview. I listened to the whole thing. I didn't even speed it up. Usually I listen to things at 1.5 times, but I didn't even speed it up. I just listened to it in the background as I worked along, and it was a nice conversation. So
love it.
We will share that.
Yeah, awesome. We need more of those, and I'm glad he's doing it because he's got a great perspective. He's got a great personality, a great delivery that I think is a little different, more casual, more fun. Sounds like other people aren't fun, but more carefree. No, I understand. Yeah. And his premise that he pitched me originally was like, it's just a conversation. Let's talk about what we want to talk about. And I almost. Yeah. And I realized later that, so way back in the day, there were days where there, in dance music, it becomes all consuming, or it can become all consuming. And so now I'm really dating myself, but there was a rave collective back in the 90s, and they had an open space where they'd throw parties, but Tuesdays or whatever were no techno Tuesdays. And so I almost want to see more. I'm tempted to do it myself, but I can't add more time. I don't need another project, but we need a podcast that's like WordPress and tech, where we don't talk about WordPress and tech. And so it's just people's stories or what else goes on in their lives. Cause it's sometimes we can't hear the same stories again, or we need to stop thinking about marketing and tech for a minute and talk about oh, they have dogs, or, what are their hobbies, or the nonprofits that they volunteer with, or,
Kathy's aunt and I have that, but it's just the two of us. We don't bring in guests, right? So we have WP Motivate, where we literally just shoot the breeze every week and share it out with everybody. But yeah, I see what you're saying. And I think Ben is good at that. He is definitely has a lot of those kinds of, he just wants to have a conversation and see where it goes. I'm going to recommend to him to get a ring light or something like that, because he needs a little more illumination on his face. It's almost like he's talking about witness protection.
I love that he jumped in. And in fact, in the 5 or 10 minutes before, and I think he tweeted Corey was patient. And I think part of what he was referring to was, I was like, okay, you sound terrible. You look terrible. Adjust this. Yeah. But I mean, I've been a sound engineer and a lighting tech, even professionally for decades. So it's like, here are the quick things that we can do. He put on headphones and suddenly sounded way better just because of a better microphone. And so, but inversely, I love that he just jumped in and didn't worry about it. It's like, don't care what it sounds like. Don't care what it looks like. Let's just do the first one. And that's how most of my projects have started. Podcasts have started. It's like, let's just see if we have something here and we can improve over time. And you if you listen to almost any number of podcasts that have been going for a long, long time, listen to the first one or watch the first video, and then how they've improved over time.
Oh yeah.
And everybody looks back
for sure. My first episode, thank God Allie Nimmons was so kind, because I was not the best podcaster when I was hosting my very first ever episode of a podcast. So Ben was on the WP Coffee Talk podcast a few years back, and I was one of the first people to like retweet him and that kind of stuff. And so he comments that, you know, I helped to get him into WordPress. So after like he was like, you know, saying you were going to be on the show and all, I DM'd him. I'm like, what's a girl got to do to get an invite to your show? He was like, oh shit. so yeah. Marcus also says there's also the Seriously Bud podcast that's recently come out, and I have been on it, and so has Marcus. So we should get you on with Bud as well to talk about, because Bud doesn't really talk about WordPress. He talks about you and your story and that kind of stuff, which is fun, which is kind of what you're talking about. So
that's awesome. So I apologize for not knowing about that. I've seen, totally, because I've seen that. I just recently came across it and I haven't had a chance to listen to them. So if that's what it is, then it already exists and everybody should just go listen to that one and stop listening to me.
But there's room for more, right? There's room for more. There's the way that Bud asks questions. There's might be different than the way that Ben asks questions, or whoever's listening right now decides they want to have their first podcast will ask questions too. So different conversations. Totally. WP Coffee Talk is very prescribed. I ask the same set of questions to every single person. The conversation is different, of course, but it is very prescribed. Ben from Layered WP, not prescribed at all, just an open conversation. And there's benefit to both of those things. And so finding yourself on either one or both is a wonderful thing. So there's no right or wrong way to do it, as long as people can hear you. Because if they can't hear you, then that's a really bad podcast. But as long as people can hear you, it's a good thing.
Damn it. You're going to say there is a wrong way to do it.
I'll let you have that next time.
It's just dogs barking in the background.
Exactly. Well, we had people watching today, and they identified themselves. So thank you, Adam. Thank you, Marcus, for being here with us. Really appreciate it. I'm sure there's other people that have popped in and out. I've seen the numbers kind of go up and down a little bit. And I'm sure there's people who watch us afterwards who aren't available to watch us between 5 and 6,
for sure,
13 in the evening. So whoever you are, if you do have questions, you can always put them on in the comments here. You can message us through post status. We would love to take your ideas if you want us to talk about them or answer questions that you have as we move forward with OMGIMG. So anyway, that's all I got. You got anything else?
Nope. Another lovely conversation. Thank you.
It was fun always. We'll see everybody next week.